Afternoon, guys. Dr. Ken Nordberg again. Another fireside hunting seminar. Today we're going to start talking about hunting techniques for hunting in an area where wolves or climate warming are affecting habits of whitetails. And as we're learning, climate warming can really cause some rather dramatic changes amongst whitetails, and I should explain that a little bit, why that happens. When our northern whitetails, I keep saying northern whitetails because I'm really certain about this with them. But I remember I spent some time down South Carolina studying whitetails, and I discovered down there when the temperature dropped below 60 degrees at night, that's when those bucks down there would start making antler rubs and ground scrapes. Up in here in Minnesota, they started when we got freezing temperatures at night. When you got frost at night, usually that occurred in the middle of October. And I can remember back in the old days, my brother and I couldn't wait to hear that we had a frost in our hunting area in mid-October sometime, because we knew after that we'd find all kinds of antler rubs and ground scrapes in our hunting area, which was absolute evidence of the existence of antlered bucks. And antler rubs made on big trees were made by big bucks, and ground scrapes with branches overhanging the ground scrape mangled, those were made by big dominant bucks, and usually they were at certain spots every year after year, and all kinds of things, all kinds of ways that those two kinds of buck signs would tell us about the bucks that we want to, besides trucks and droppings, of course. So, but it was kind of nice back in those days to see a lot of those. But nowadays, when we're experiencing warm Octobers, all the way through October into early November, our bucks, northern bucks, with fur that keeps them warm at 40, 45 degrees below zero, just aren't going to be making many antler rubs or ground scrapes, if any. And so in the last, 15 years, there have been a lot of years when we go out in the woods and an antler rub or ground scrape is rare, except those antler rubs that are made by bucks rubbing off velvet from their antlers around the 1st of September. And that'd be about the only kind we'd find. And after that, these single, rubs on single tree trunks were becoming really rare. It was this way last year. I don't think, all of the scouting we did, we found more than two or three antler rubs in 10 square miles. And the same could be said for ground scrapes. We found some wild breeding was in progress, and those are relatively rare and for good reasons. But at any rate, when bucks make antler rubs and ground scrapes, when the temperature drops to a comfortable level for them, what they're doing is marking their intended breeding ranges. Even yearling bucks do that, although they're not very good at where they put them. But most older bucks have put them in special places, along special trails where other bucks are sure to find them and smell them and see them. And you can see them quite a ways away. They're both scent and sight type, no trespassing signs to other bucks saying, "Oh, this is my breeding range, you guys stay out of here." But that doesn't last long. I mean, it's kind of an instinctive thing for all bucks in mid-October to want to mark intended breeding ranges. But the way things turn out is the biggest and strongest and most aggressive of the bucks that wins out, because he doesn't want competition while breeding's going on, so he chases all those others out of there temporarily. The yearlings keep running back to their mothers, and they're always a problem for those big bucks. But at any rate, that's the way it used to be. Well, now, when we got these warm temperatures, they aren't making antler rubs and ground scrapes, meaning they're not doing much of a job, if any, of establishing their intended home ranges. None of them. Which also means they're not chasing those lesser adult bucks that are likely to be competition later on when does are in heat. Not chasing them out of there either. So what it means is, in that kind of weather, when you got a warm October, early days of November, warm, too warm to make antler rubs and grouse clips, there's probably more mature bucks in your hunting area than you realize. Normally, except after bucks chase them away temporarily, when the lesser bucks away, normally there's a big dominant breeding buck in a square mile. It isn't square, it's kind of oblong usually, but there's a big dominant breeding buck in there, and then usually there's 3 other mature bucks in that area, meaning bucks that are 2.5 to 6.5 years of age, but aren't dominant, living in that square mile. And then there's yearling bucks, and half of the yearlings are bucks and half are does. So there's quite a few deer running around that square mile that are antlered. Some of them can be even trophy class bucks, even though they're not dominant breeding bucks. They're bucks that you would be proud to put on a wall. There's bucks like that in almost every square mile, at least one. Well, when you got abnormally warm weather during this period, even though those bucks haven't been chased out of there, they're not moving either. And consequently, you can walk out there in the woods and sit in a tree or on the ground, stand hunting, all during this period, and think, holy cow, there's no bucks here. Something's got to be done to improve the number of bucks in the area, especially older bucks. So, it'll seem as if there's no bucks, even though there's more than usual in that kind of warm weather. Well, where you have a lot of wolves, and of course where deer numbers have been dramatically reduced because of wolves, and where whitetails are changing habits like feeding at night only, and absolutely refusing to move around in the daytime hours, it'll still seem like the same. Right? There are truly fewer bucks in your hunting area, but there's still some bucks out there. And there's at least the big dominant breeding buck out there. The oldest buck who's surviving in this area, if there's none more aggressive and bigger than him, no matter what his age may be, maybe only 3.5-year-old, he's the dominant breeding buck of the area. And there's usually one like that no matter what, even under severe conditions like we have up in our hunting area. But they aren't moving. Or they're following these does that have learned how to keep away from wolves, and so that they aren't completely wiped out in our hunting area. And you don't see them because they become nocturnal, and they never feed in the same place or even bed in the same place twice. All this time you're sitting out there in the woods, and it gets to be pretty dismal stand hunting when it's like that out there. So, today, your thinking has to be a little different. It's not, all this doesn't mean you have no chance to get a buck. Not by any means, or other deer for that matter. Yeah, but it's going to be a lot harder. So there's things you need to be doing differently than ever before. For one thing, you got to be better than ever at concealing yourself when you're at a stand site. Because, even as good as you might be, if you're truly next to a trail that this buck is going to use today, and it's a lot harder to figure that out nowadays when that big buck is not stuck in this 1 square mile and breeding does in that 1 square mile like in the old days. Now he's with these does bunched up that they were, and the does not just sticking to their own little 125 acre home ranges with them bunched up, moving all over the place, an area as big as 2 square miles in size and maybe even a little bigger than that. Well, that buck is not going to be, the odds that that buck is going to use that trail or feed in this feeding area twice in a row are not very good, because that buck is going to be on the move so much over a huge area rather than just a square mile. That big dominant buck, a big area, and he's going to, because he's in this big area and these does are scattered out over a much larger area. He's going to be more active during daylight hours than before. Anyway, now he's traveling over many more trails. Even if this was the best spot in the whole 2 square mile area to hunt a buck, where your odds are the best for getting a buck there, he's not going to come back. The chances are that he's going to use that same trail today are pretty remote. Even though the way things work out, when a big buck is traveling while does are in estrus, he'll stick to scrape trails, but gee, we don't even have scrape trails now. What we've got is major deer trails that are better used during hunting season. Now, if you scout early, you're going to find trails in a doe range that'll have tracks of big bucks in them and droppings of big bucks in them. And usually these are well-used trails, and even the most novice deer hunter can go out in the woods and say, oh boy, this trail is used a lot, and there's got to be a big buck come along here one of these times, so this is a good spot to sit. But in the old days that didn't work out very well, because most trails that are well-used are well-traveled by does and their young, doe families, and it looks really good. But those big bucks didn't use all those well-used trails made by does, only certain ones where they like to make ground scrapes and antler rubs, which are at strategic spots where other bucks, if they sneak back, are almost sure to find them and be warned, keep out of here or you're in big trouble. You know, big bucks, antler rubs, and ground scrapes, they tell other bucks, I'm here, and if you better not be here because I'll find you and you're in trouble. And so that's what those antler rubs and ground scrapes are for. Well, if they're not there, then things are different. You know, the does, when they make a trail, it's made by a number of deer. They got their yearlings are with them, and they stay with them. They're with her during their yearling year, and the fawns. They go back and forth to different places on this same trail. They're kind of boring a tunnel through cover branches, overhanging the grass. They get it to the point where all the grass is gone in the trail, just all chopped up bare soil in that trail, you know, and well used. But what they end up with is tunnel that's as tall as the doe's back and as wide as a mature doe's back, and as wide as a mature doe's body, or the width of its ears when there's out to both sides. But that's too small for a big dominant buck. Like up where we hunt, our does get to be 140, 150 pounds. And there's some that are older or heavier, but most of them are like in that range. And our big dominant bucks, it's not uncommon for a lot of them to weigh over 300 pounds. 305 is real common for a big dominant breeding buck. Twice as heavy as a doe. And it's got antlers sticking out beyond the tips of its ears on both sides. And so that tunnel through cover is not a quiet trail for a big dominant breeding buck. If he goes down that trail, his antlers are getting caught in branches and all that kind of thing, and he's much taller in the back and all that, and that's not a quiet trail. So a lot of those trails that you see that are well used in the woods are made by does and they're young, but they aren't used by big bucks because he'd rather walk off trail somewhere than walk on that trail made by those deer. So And they'll walk off trail up to 50% of the time, while those aren't in. Just because of that, they'll pick different ways to go. Now, the ways they'll pick will be marked by their tracks. You find tracks, northern whitetail like Minnesota, that big 305-pound buck will have 4-inch long hoof prints. And they'll make droppings in 7/8 to inch and an eighth, sometimes 1.25 inches in length. And you find a trail that's got a lot of those kind of tracks and those kind of droppings on it, you found the kind of trail that buck is likely to use the next time he's in the area. Now, he doesn't have to, he can follow his favorite trails through a doe range and find a doe, because when a doe's in estrus, he can smell that pheromone up to a mile away. He doesn't have to be right there next to the doe to know that doe's in heat. He can smell that doe quite a ways away. So he'll have certain trails he'll use going through these doe ranges to find does in heat. And that's the kind of trail you want to find. Now, I'm going to show you a picture there. A few years ago, I shot a big dominant breeding, a 12-pointer. And I picked that spot for a stand site, ground level stand site, behind a little spruce tree in deep grass, because there were two trails coming together. One going east and west, one going north and south, and both trails had a lot of those big buck droppings and big buck tracks on it. In fact, the one that was going east and west was all chopped up, and I didn't see any tracks small enough to be made by does or other deer on that trail. It was just big buck tracks of trail. That was a favorite trail of a big buck, a big dominant buck that lived in the area, to go from place to place while he lived there. So now then, let's say you got trouble with wolves, or you got trouble with climate warming, like most of us have, even down Texas, wherever it's warm down there in the fall, but it's even warmer with climate warming, and that's affecting those deer. They're not used to that. So anyway, what you're looking for is something like that, where you got a trail that is often used by a big buck. Now, when breeding is in progress, that trail might not be used very often. He might only use that trail once in 3, 4, 5 days, because he's traveling through a huge area now, not just a square mile, but a bigger area where we are. And so you can't expect that buck to be walking on that trail every day. So what that means is, what we're going to be, the way we're going to hunt, and this might sound strange coming from a Nordberg, because we've been in the habit of changing stand sites every half day for years, we're going to be much more patient about trails currently or a short time earlier, like before breeding began, that was used a lot by a big buck. We're going to be more patient with that trail. So what I'm saying is, what I'm planning to do, I am planning to sit in one spot. I'm gonna hunt that trail for 3 days at least, maybe 4 even, but at least 3 days, because it might be that long before he comes back into this area. Maybe 4 would be even better. We'll find out from our experience this next fall. And not only that, but I'm gonna sit there. I'm gonna take a bag lunch with me every day, and I'm gonna stay out there from dark to dark every day. I still might miss that buck if he comes through there at night. I won't see him. But anyway, I'm planning to be much more patient about those kind of trails that are favored by big bucks in doe ranges. And if it isn't that kind of trail, I don't care what it looks like. I'm not going to waste my time on it. I'm going to only hunt trails that have been used a lot by a big buck from now on. And it has to be that way. I don't care how many, they can look like a cow trail from all the use, worn down, deep trench-like trails. If there's no buck tracks in that trail, while scouting earlier, like say 2 or more weeks earlier, well before breeding begins, I'm not going to mess with it. But if there's any trail I find that's got all kinds of big buck tracks in it and droppings, even if they're a little bit older, you know, like maybe these were made days earlier and the droppings are starting to get dull on the surface, they're drying out and that kind of, that, if those were made a short, like say within a week earlier, I'm going to really favor that trail. Even better, I'm going to favor crossings that are both buck trails. And I'm going to favor some other places, like, let me show you something. I've got 2 spots in mind right now. I've been thinking about this. You know, this is a big thing for me because this is my job, you know, to figure out things like this and how to hunt deer under different circumstances. I've got one spot. Let's see. What we've got here is a big. This is all. This area over here is all spruce bog. Water in it, puddles, boy, all kinds of water in there, but it's spruce bog. And even if there wasn't water, it's tough to walk around in a spruce bog. You got a deep moss growing in there, and that's no fun going across a place like that. And over here is a swamp. Over here on this side is a big, large highland. Been one of the favorite, you know, it's just really good deer country. There's always been a lot of deer in there in past years. A favorite spot for us. We've taken to hunt bucks, and we've taken a lot of bucks over here. Same way over that way. Now, when a big buck is searching for does and estrus, and that came to mind this last year. That one morning I was going out this way to go across to a spot beyond this big spruce bog, which extends back, way back over here, and it becomes an elder swamp besides. When I was going there in the morning, I ran across, 2 deer crossed in front of me in the dark. I could just see there was 2 deer up ahead, maybe about 40 yards ahead of me. And one was a lot bigger than the other, and boy, he looks big. And our bucks commonly have really dark antlers, and in lighting like that, it's hard to see those antlers. But they went across right in front of me. And I was standing about here, and there they went. And I was kind of saying, oh boy, that was a big buck. And I went up there, sure enough, one set of tracks was made by a deer with hoofs 3 inches long, and the other set was made by a deer with tracks 4 inches long. And that's this big dominant buck with a doe in heat. He wouldn't be messing around with that doe unless it was in heat. Oh, I got this map. I'm sorry. Now let me get this straightened out here. I was here, and they crossed here. That's where they did. Now, many years ago, we used to camp right here. And there's this mud hole down here, cattails in it and that kind of thing. And what I always got, we'd get up there in the fall, and gee, there'd be trees with antler rubs, and we'd find ground scrapes in this area right behind our camp here. And we always thought that was really funny, and we always had our latrine right back there where those deer went back and forth there, and always thought that was really funny, but we never took it very seriously then, because our camp was here for, the deer aren't going to mess around on that trail anymore. Well, we haven't camped there for quite a few years now. So last year when I was going in here, this buck and doe crossed right here. And the reason they did, now over this way is a huge area where we've also taken a lot of bucks over the years. Now, a big dominant buck that's cruising in search of a doe in heat, that is over here or over here, is, no matter which way he comes from, is going to end up going through this little area, right, this little corridor. That's why we kept seeing antler rubs and brown scrapes here years ago. This last year, that's why I saw this big buck with a doe, because they had come this way through this little corridor here. And so what I'm thinking about is putting a blind over here on this side where I can watch, because there's trails coming from every direction on that side. They funnel down into this little corridor and then they branch out. They can go any which way from there. But I'm going to spend some serious time this next year sitting here watching this, keeping down below here. Now, one of the reasons I want to put it there is I don't want to touch that trail. I don't want to get I don't want to put fresh trail scent on it. So when I come in to hunt there, I'm going to come in from this direction and go to this blind right here. Now then, one of the problems we've learned over the years is that big bucks are so good at finding you. I don't know, see a motion, or maybe smell a lot of trail scent around the area where you're standing, because you've been messing around there and cutting brush and doing whatever you're doing, making shooting lanes, or piling up brush, to make a brush blind or something like that in that area. But you get this all full of trail scent over here, and a big buck can come by there when you're not even there. You go up there 2 weeks before the season goes, and you do that, and if that big buck comes down through there and he gets into this area where he deposited a lot of trail scent, he's going to check it out. And he's going to notice that, holy cow, there's a lot of human trail scent here. And that's a sign to big bucks. That's not good. That's a place to keep away from. This is an ambush site of a human. They do that all the time nowadays. You don't even have to be there. You don't have to be, if you're in the tree or on the ground, it doesn't matter. But when you find a place where it's got intensive area that's intense with human trail scent, that's a danger spot as far as older bucks are concerned. Not only that, even if they don't smell that, us northerners are really good at concealing ourselves. We've gotten to the point now where we only use natural cover and we don't alter things in a way out in front of us or in the sides that would be noticeable. You cut a big branch off and here's a bright end of a branch, or a branch on the tree, you cut that out, big bright mark on the tree. We don't create anything in that area that's going to catch the eye of a buck. And use natural cover. Pick a spot where you're really well concealed, and that's so important. But even under those circumstances, boy, if you aren't really well concealed, the buck is going to get you the first time it comes through there. He's going to say, oh, there's a human, and it's just sitting there. And he doesn't worry about you, except you're sitting there. He says, that's an ambush site. So he won't leave the area when he finds you there. He just stops going there. Maybe he'll go way around somewhere to go around that spot from that time on. So one kind of blind that can actually give you 100% protection from being identified as a human, whether in a tree or on the ground, is one of these portable Camo stands. But the trouble with them, I've done some experimenting with them in the past, all kinds of different cover or stand sites. If it contrasts greatly with the cover around it, they're going to notice it. It's just like, you might as be sitting there pounding on a drum or shining a brick right out there toward the deer, and he comes along and says, look at that now, that's different. And that'll arouse his suspicion right away. And he might even sneak a little, because I haven't seen this deer before, and he might come up there and he's being real cautious and sniffing and that kind of thing and listening. and being really cautious because that thing is different. Well, so up until this point, I haven't found a camo pattern on clothing or anything that really matches well with the cover where I hunt deer. Now, one kind of cover we have a lot of in that area, it's this Canadian shield country, a lot of bare rock up there. Some of those bare rocks are a quarter-mile long. Big rocks and big boulders, round ones, great big round ones. We got one that's about 10 feet in diameter, call that one Bunyan's Marble. We got another place where there's some as big as a house. The spot we call Boulder City, there's a whole bunch of them there. And some of them are square topped, like on a house, but most of the ones that we see up there are rounded. And some are only a couple feet tall, and there's others that are 6 feet and 8 feet tall, and just like somebody giant was playing with marbles there and scattering them all over the place, but they were deposited there by glaciers that left the area 10,000 years ago. And they were rounded up by the movement of the glacier, and there's this big round rock there. Now, a square top blind, one that looks like a box you put out there, is going to really catch a buck's eye because there's nothing else in the woods that is square on top. Square size, square corner, square top. I've tried those, and doggone it, I have never had a big buck come close to one that is like that. I've seen some does come close, but even them will see that thing, and they're constantly looking at it when they're eating, and they'll look at you some more, and they just don't trust that square top thing over there. And a lot of them stink like crazy when you get them. If they're not aired out, if you get a portable like that, you need to set up in your backyard and let it sit there for weeks in the rain and whatever to help deodorize the darn thing. Get rid of odors on it. Maybe spray it with odor killer and things like that, which will help. It's not 100%, but you got to get rid of most of that odor. But anyway, there's a new camo pattern out there. Now, I got a problem with that. I can't advertise that by talking about it on my seminar here. But it's a new one. It's a company that's been making a good camo pattern, but they've made a new kind, with a the same first name and then a new second name. And I like the looks of it because it's got a lot of gray in it, like our big boulders, and it's round top. Got a round top. And I like that two-man one that they have. It's round top, and otherwise it's fairly straight on the sides, but that's all right. And that new camo pattern really looks good in this country. Now, I've learned too from using portable blinds in the past, they work much better if they're well hidden. And I said, well, what's this? This is silly. I don't have to, why should I have to hide this blind? I can just go out there and sit on my stool in good cover and be hidden instead of having to hide the blind out in the woods. Well, I'm going to try it again. I think this round top thing will look like a lot of these big boulders where I hunt, a common boulder with moss and even ferns, little ferns growing in the top, and other vegetation growing closely around it. I think it'll look pretty darn good. And but even with that, if I can hide it, 50% of it, like one good way to hide something new is put it right next to something that already exists there. Like here's a big boulder, and the deer are there from birth. They've seen that boulder. It's there all the time. Wouldn't catch their attention. And if this thing is sitting there, partly hidden next to that big boulder, it won't be near as noticeable if it's all alone out in the open. If it's all alone in the open, It might fool a turkey or a duck, but it's not going to fool a dominant breeding buck, not by any means. So it's got to be hidden. Now, so I know I can hide it. There's a lot of evergreens here. Some of them are young, you know, they're only 6, 7, 8, 10 feet tall in bunches, clumps. Now if I can get that into sitting in a clump, so it's mostly hidden, but it's round top, no square edge, no square straight edges on it. It isn't going to be near as noticeable to deer as before. And if I have it well aired out and as odor-free as possible and put it out there 2 weeks before deer hunting, so that the first deer that come along and see this thing, they might be curious about it, but if there's nothing there to really make them think this is bad. Like when a big buck comes, you know, and you find an area that's just full of human trail scent, which lasts 4 days, that's not good for a stand site when you're hunting big bucks. That's not big buck effective when you do that. We've learned over the years, we find a spot, oh, I want to sit there and that looks like a good spot over there, and I go over there, and we don't change the cover at all. We're not clipping and breaking and sawing and all that kind of thing. Maybe stomp down some grass in there where you're going to sit, and or push leaves aside, fallen leaves where you're going to sit, and your stool's going to go in there, and you're going to sit down in there, and you're going to be well hidden, and you're going to wear a head net over your head and all that kind of thing. But what we're saying is, pick a spot, do what you have to get it ready, and get out of there, and don't be spreading scent all over the place. You know, I've already decided this trail here, I can go in there, say in spring or earlier, like in September, and say, oh, here's the trail, and there's a spot where I want to put a blind. It's perfect, be well hidden. I can go there 2 weeks early, put that blind in there, and leave it alone, and don't go there until the first time I'm going to hunt there. I'm not going to put any trail cams there, nothing that I have to go back for. This is, after 4 days, this area is going to be scent-free. And there's just this round boulder sitting over there amongst those spruce trees there. And that isn't unusual because, boy, there's more big boulders around here. Maybe they said, maybe something happens, maybe they hatch out of the ground or something. But anyway, there it is. And that's what I'm going to do. And when this one here, I'll be able to use it whatever the wind is from the west. Anywhere from southwest, well actually anywhere from southwest to northeast, I can go in and use that. All those wind directions. This will be a perfect spot for this funneling area. Okay, that's one. That's kind of thinking you got to be making nowadays. Now, let's talk about another spot I have in mind. Now, this one is also a funneling spot, but a different one. There's this big elder swamp, and then it gets to be kind of a grassy swamp over here, deep grass with a lot of water in it, and there's puddles of water here and there, and there's evergreens growing in there as well in this elder swamp here. And then it kind of opens up over here. And then on this side is a big, long, rocky ridge. And on this side is a nice valley, and John has taken several bucks over here. Nice bucks. And this area down here, we've seen big bucks, and John has taken a good buck down there, a dominant breeding buck down there as well in this area. Now this area opens up to just a huge area, all good deer country. All kinds of work that we did last year to hunt was over in this area, back in this way, in this direction. A big area in this area. Now, across this swamp quite a few years ago, I made a trail across here, and since then John and I have cleaned this up a little bit here. And you know what? That became the most commonly used way to get from this country to this country. going across on this trail. It became a well-used, you know, bears and moose using it. But anybody that was over on this side, and they want to go over to this side or vice versa, uses that trail. Then when they get over here, when they get over, there's a deer trail that goes all along here. But when they get over here, there's a trail going here, and another one going there. And they all funnel down to this one trail. And the same way over on this side, there's a trail that goes all the way back here, another one that way, another one that way, and then this one going this way. That is a dynamite trail hub right there, and this has been a big buck trail hub for as long as I can remember. And you know what? We've never seriously hunted that spot. Over here's a great big rock. So, and there's boulders out here. You know, different places. There's big boulders all over in this area. So what I'm thinking about, I'm going to put, well, this comes down here. I'm going to put a portable blind right here, where I can keep an eye on all this crossing here. It's a funneling area again. Absolutely well known as a spot that any deer, all deer, when they want to go from here to there or there, go across that spot right there. That's their place to go. And it all funnels together there. So I'm going to put mine here in wooded cover next to the edge here, where I can keep an eye on this area where all these trails converge. That's a dynamite buck hunting spot. Now, from now on, until there's a lot of deer in the area, which may not happen in my lifetime, that's the kind of spots I'm going to be looking for. Now, there's another one, and I don't need to make diagrams for them, but I'll show you several pictures here, and we have several. There's some I made in Wisconsin where the deer trail's coming down to the stream. And picture you took last year, this trail through the bulrushes next to that bigger stream there. Show those two pictures. But anyway, watering spots. Now, you know, one of the things, when you got a lot of heat and drought along with it, that's working, in some ways it's making things harder for you, but on the other hand, it's creating dynamite stand sites. Because even deer that only feed at night are going to get thirsty during the day. You know, normally they would only drink water deeply twice a day. But if they're doing all their feeding at night, sometime during the day, maybe at noon, they're going to go to water. They're going to be thirsty. And if you find a spot where a lot of deer, it's really tracked up, going down the water all muddy at the edge there, and especially if you see bigger, you know, tracks of older bucks, anywhere from 3 5/8 all the way up to 4 inches in length, just for the track, not counting the blue dew paw impressions, but just the hoof only. That's a dynamite spot, because sometime during the day, when it's hot, that doe or that buck or whatever is thinking, boy, I'm so darn thirsty, I gotta go get a drink of water. So your odds of seeing a deer at a heavily used watering spot are excellent during the day. Another reason to sit there in that spot where you can watch those kind of spots all day. The buck on the move, looking for does, he's going to go out of his way to go get a drink of water. He's going to show up at water spots anytime during the day. You just don't know when it's going to be. He doesn't know when it's going to be, where he's going to smell the next doe, and then he's going to be with her for 24 hours, and then he's going to be looking for another doe. And that doe is going to be with a bunch. They'll be moving around a lot, so you can't figure out where they're going to feed next, because that doe that's leading the bunch, including that big buck, is not going to go back to where it went yesterday or the day before or the day before that. So that part is that part is shot right now, the way things are. So, but water, that's different. Now, a heavily used water spot is a good spot because it's close to where they're bedding, and there's good cover there. Because deer know they're really vulnerable when they got their heads down drinking water. They're really worried what's around here and only get attacked by a wolf. So, those kind of water spots are dynamite spots. But if you go in the morning and then you don't see any deer and you go back to camp, I'm going to go somewhere else, and then while you're in camp or maybe at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, here comes the buck and goes down there. You missed the boat. When's it going to come around next? Might be 3-4 days from now. So to avoid missing a chance like that, you got to stay there all day now. Bring a lunch along. Sit crossword or down. Another thing, wherever you sit, stay at least 20 feet away from the trail those deer are going to be crossing or passing. So that means, maybe you're used to walking on this trail here to get over this area or walking on that trail. Well, don't walk on it. You get there some other direction. Stay away from it. And then go in. And if you go in, if you have to cross the trail, do it real close to where you're sitting, because that's where the deer is going to stop. That deer is going to come on. Oh, this is fresh. He'll smell that. His head will go down and sniff it. His head will go up, come up, and he'll look in the direction you went. They can tell what direction you went from your trail scent. So, but the good thing about that is, when it hits your trail scent, you may get into your blind, that is going to stop. I've shot several bucks making that stop. One is a 10-pointer I got one year. When it sniffed that, it raised its head and looked in my direction, and I could just feel it thinking, uh-oh, saying uh-oh to itself. Kapow, and went down it went. So, I was sitting behind a pine tree 6 feet tall on my stool. That was my blind, a natural pine tree. And a little opening between boughs, and I could actually lay my stock against a branch for a nice steady aim, and that buck was about almost 100 yards away when I shot. I shot him in the neck, but down he went. But I know he was thinking, uh-oh, because bucks expect ambushes all the time. And they're looking for ambushes, whether they're up in the tree or on the ground. And so this was a 10-pointer. He had a lot of experience now. And he said, oh, geez, he didn't like the looks of this at all. This hunter went down that way. And now here I'm standing in the middle of this opening. So stay off the trail that the deer are going to use to get there, close to your blind. Now, like I say, I'm going to use a new blind this year. And I have high hopes that it'll work, because it's going to closely match natural foliage and backgrounds in the area I hunt. And not only that, it's going to look like it's shaped like a big round boulder. And so I think there's a good chance, and I get that thing aired out, as odor-free as possible before I start using it. And I'm going to put it in these two places I just talked about. This one funneling area I was telling you about, and this one, this kind of funneling area as well. I'm going to put at least 3 days on each one of those. Maybe more. But at any rate, the other one I have in mind, this one, is good for all winds from the northeast to the southeast. So, sitting here, I'll be sitting about, not quite 100 yards from this spot. But, so, I got one on this side and one over there, and these two are about a quarter mile apart. And if the wind's anywhere from the west, I'm going here, and if the wind's anywhere from the east, I'm going to this one. Anywhere from the west, I'm going to that first one. That's 2 spots. That's a week's hunting in those 2 spots. Now I need 2 more spots. So this coming summer and early fall, my big job is to find a couple more like that. I want a watering spot. I want a watering spot. I got a good watering spot, but I promised it to my buddy Rick. And so that's his spot. I told him, this is your spot. You know, he helped set it up, get it all ready. That's his spot. That's a good one. But I want a watering spot of my own. So I'm going to do some searching around water, what water we have left. See, four of our original beaver ponds are all dried up, so they're not watering spots anymore. But I got to find water for this old man. I mean, I know where, you saw some pictures of watering spots. I can't go, I'm not going to go that far. That one of them is well over a mile away, and I'm not going to be tramping a mile away in the dark at 5 in the morning to hunt that spot. When I've got spots like these 2 I just talked to you about that aren't going to be that far away. And that what gives me a lot of good reason to believe they might be real good is just seeing this one buck and doe go through this thing early one morning this last year. So that's kind of stuff you got to do. But see, now finding good spots is one thing. The other one we've been talking about, good concealment. Now, if this new blind I'm going to get enables me to see older does, mature does, and bucks of any age, except yearling bucks, they don't prove nothing. They're as dumb as a fawn usually, or even worse when they're not with their mothers. That doesn't prove anything, but if I see any older bucks within, say, 50 yards that are acting like they have no idea I'm there, then I'm going to be really a happy man. So, but this is the closest thing I've found in all these years made by men that will come close to looking like it's part of my hunting area. So I'm looking forward to trying. I can't wait to try them. And I can't wait, I already can't wait for the next hunting season because I know of these 2 spots. So with that, now, that will give you something to think about. One other thing, you're not going to get many chances when things are like this to shoot a big buck. So, you should always be thinking in terms of getting the easiest shot possible so you get it when you get a chance. It isn't something where it's big bucks bounding through heavy cover, going as fast as you can, that kind of thing. Those are iffy shots. You want sure thing shots. You want a buck that doesn't know you're anywhere around, that's just walking. Maybe stopping, maybe feeding, or drinking water. You don't want him to know you're there. So concealment is everything. Now, really good concealment. And not only while you're sitting there, but getting there. You don't want deer that might be within seeing distance or hearing distance to hear or see you going to that blind. Because if you do, it's just the same as they were right there when you got there. So you got to have a fairly clean trail. And if it's a deer trail, get all the dead branches out of it, that kind of thing. Get it clean so you get the... And when you go there, you use the wolf roost. You've heard me talk about wolf roost. You're probably tired of hearing about the word wolf roost. Use that when you go to your stand and leave it. Leaving is just important because you're going to go back there. You want a chance. You don't want to ruin it on the way out. You don't hunt on the way in. You don't sneak. You don't stop off and look around. That's terrible. Even if the deer doesn't see you doing it, they can hear you doing it. And that's dangerous to them. So that's important too. And then another thing that's important, be a good shot. I mean, when you go and do some serious shooting at the range, go to the range. I know it costs $1 a bullet or more nowadays. But go there and do some shooting and get your shots like 100 yards, get them all into, say, the area of a size of a silver dollar. I can do it within the size of a nickel with my 7mm Magnum. With the scope cranked up to 7 power, I can put them all in a little 5 shots in a little spot. But get it down there. Don't be one of these guys that shoots offhand and they say, oh, they got 3 of 10 shots into a thing about the size of a dinner plate and say, oh, that's good enough. I can hit them. When you shoot at a real live deer, you're not as steady as you are at the range even standing offhand. You're going to be worse. Be lucky to hit the deer if that's the best you can do. So make sure your first shot is perfect. And whatever you have to do, better sight, better scope, practice, but make sure, a rest, if you're in an enclosed blind, maybe have a couple cross sticks tied together so you can rest your gun stock on that thing so it's nice and steady when you're in there and you're looking through your scope the deer and you squeeze the trigger. Excellent shooting advice. Got that? Okay, with that, that's enough for today. Next time we're going to start talking about specific hunting methods and how to adapt them to this kind of hunting. And so that'll be fun. I can't wait to start that. So with that, be sure to hit that subscribe button. That's a favor to me. It's important to me in my future as a seminar speaker on YouTube. Do that, please. It's no skin off it won't cost you anything. It just takes a minute or two off your time. But click that, and then the thumbs up button as well. That's almost as important, if not more so. Do that for me, will you please? I want to be able to continue this as long as I'm alive, as long as I'm able to do research, field research, and I'm still doing it. 86 years old now, going on 87 for a couple of months, few months. So anyway, do that for me. Because I won't be around forever on this. Maybe a couple of years from now, I'll be saying, well, I wish Dr. Norberg was still around because he'd know what to do. Well, when that time comes, if you got my book, my 10th edition, and I'll tell you a little secret. I'm in the process of writing another book, 11th edition. It won't be a big one, it'll be a smaller one. And it's about hunting where under adverse conditions, adapting to whatever's wrong in your hunting area. So watch for that. But it doesn't have everything my 10th edition is. That's what you really need today. You need to know those hunting methods in order to make them work. You need to know how to do it. So get that book. And then you can use it for the next 50 years, and your children can use it, and your children's children can use it, because those methods can be used without ruining your hunting area. You'll always be able to use them. So, we'll do that, will you guys? And I thank you for that. And with that, we'll say goodbye, and we'll see you again soon. Be sure to visit my website. Here's the link. Here you'll find links to my blog posts, my Twitter account, my YouTube account, my Amazon store with links to my ebooks, my son's eBay store, a money saver if you're ordering from Canada or other countries, my website bookstore, and much more.